elementary, my dear Watson.
When you think of Sherlock Holmes, what do you picture? London, the 1900s, mysteries, maybe Batman and Data. How about robots? The 90s was an interesting time for cartoons. Genetically engineered talking dinosaurs, mutated sharks, a football team that turned into the Knights of Justice, a kid with a magic red cap, and an alien chicken mentor. How do you compete with all this weird stuff? That's where Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century pops in. Instead of having the series take place in the past, it sets it 200 years into the future. I thought the concept was a good idea to try. I've seen crazier stuff work before. By having it in the future, you aren't bogged down by history. You can feature cooler things like hover cars, computers, hacking, laser weapons. It gives a better chance for kids to like it. But it wasn't just contemporary. They had the real Holmes from the 19th century brought to the 22nd. His body was stored away just like how insects trapped in amber are. They pulled a Jurassic Park, rejuvenating him back to life. They adapt many of the classic stories into the series. In the pilot episode, they take Holmes' death and the final problem as the start, reenacting the struggle at Reichenbach Falls. But they also do original episodes. Holmes doesn't just solve the mysteries, he's more active in stopping them. The novels had his background vague, on top of making him younger than his original age. They tweaked it for this show. He's able to defend himself, he can fight and sometimes do acrobatics, not to mention pretty good with the weapon. If you're a hardcore Holmes fan, you might not like this change. He doesn't turn into Batman. Him being the master detective is still here and the thing he does the most. He's like David Tennant's Doctor Who. Now, who's brought over from the novels and who's new? The series features new Scotland Yard as the main location, as well as Holmes' original home at 221B Baker Street. It became a tourist attraction over the 200 plus years, with pretty much everything remaining intact. The only futuristic thing added to the building was a holovid in one of the mirrors. Holmes being younger than the novel version does make him more cocky. It can put you off from him.
I'm sure you can succeed where New Scotland Yard cannot.
It wouldn't be the first time.
There are times he knows too much of the 22nd century. I know they do the whole Matrix download thing so he learns faster, but it's 200 years of info dumping. I don't care how good you are, you're not going to remember everything. I wish they had given him more episodes to acclimate himself. They don't make him perfect. He does get things wrong or need help from his team. It just comes later in the show when it should be at the start. Holmes wouldn't be complete without Watson. They came up with a clever way in bringing back Watson. The police force have copy droids that help out their inspectors. With a little bit of reading from Watson's original journals, the Watson robot that aids Inspector Lestrade gained the original Watson's personality somehow. Here's the first thing that sucked about the series. It being a 30-minute cartoon really rushes stuff like this. The second episode of the series is based off the moment when Watson got shot in the 3 Garridibs. They do have Holmes reject Robot Watson. It's not his friend that he solved mysteries with 200 years ago. But 5 minutes later, Robot Watson dives in front of him, takes that bullet, laser, which makes Holmes accept him as Watson. It's a cool way to reference that moment from the novel. There's just no proper build-up. The show only had 26 episodes. They had to set up the series in just 3. So characters tend to jarringly jump between, oh, I'm rusty, to being idiots, to being cool again. It's the biggest annoyance I had.
Nobody's worn glasses in over 100 years. You really need to catch up on your holo studies.
Robot Watson still functions as Holmes' helper, but with added abilities. Super strength, item storage, information recall, and direct communication to Scotland Yard. He's basically Data from Star Trek, takes things too literally and misses the fine details that Holmes sees. I guess that's their way in having Watson learn under him, but they love to forget he's a robot. Sherlock did have one other friend in the novels, Lestrade. He was his connection to the police. People tend to forget Holmes is not an official police officer, just a consultant. So they made Lestrade's descendant for the series, Inspector Beth Lestrade, the only American. She's similar to the original character. Holmes and Beth always clash on who leads the team. Hot-headed, getting into trouble a lot, usually property damage. But the chief trusts her instincts. Beth can understand how Holmes breaks down the crimes, getting better as the series progresses. The episodes are 99% standalone, but the characters don't reset. Holmes learns to respect her. Beth doesn't jump into action without a plan. Watson and Beth always argue with each other. He's always too serious, she's emotional, just like Dr. McCoy and Spock, that type of back and forth. For the new things, London itself looks much like Blade Runner. Hover cars, neon signs, giant buildings. We got 3 side characters, Wiggins, Deidre, Tennyson, not that Tennyson, and Martin Fenwick. The first 3 are a part of the group called the New Baker Street Irregulars, teens that act like hoodlums, try to sell things to get by. I wouldn't classify them as thieves, but the show glosses over their backgrounds. Besides Wiggins, who was a former football player, they unofficially help out Holmes when they need information about the underground, gangs, people getting brainwashed, stuff like that. Typical cool characters of the 90s. They feel like they came out of Extreme Ghostbusters or X-Men. I don't hate them, just afterthoughts that never got developed. Martin Fenwick is one of the main villains. He's responsible for most of the city going to hell, from his ability to clone, reprogram people into criminals, and somehow is able to protect himself from being reformed. Yeah, the police, when they capture criminals in this universe, they brainwash you into good people. This never gets brought up in any ethical way. I have to bring up one big issue. They wanted the real Holmes. The rejuvenation process basically eliminates death. Stick a body in this special chamber, no matter how old it was, boom, you're back to life at whatever age you set it. Now, if we have Sherlock Holmes, you need Moriarty, which is where his clone comes in. Fenwick's original idea was to clone Moriarty and make him become his servant, which of course backfires. The thing I gotta know is how? How did Fenwick find Moriarty? Holmes kept the location of his dead body a secret to his grave. He was frozen Captain America style, yet Fenwick figured it out. But also just leaves the body. It's pretty stupid. I would have preferred if Fenwick was just a descendant like Beth was to Lestrade. Fenwick isn't really all that important to the series. He's basically a glorified Dr. Frankenstein assistant, but he's one of the reasons why I checked out the show. Both villains are voiced by Ian Corlett and Richard Newman.
Please, entertain me with the deductive observations that led you to me.
I was in my Beast Wars phase in '99, so I had to check out everything that featured them. For Moriarty, he's on par with Sherlock. Both actors did a good job making them feel like themselves in the books. Of course, there's limitations with it being a kid's show. He's more played as a mad scientist. Visually, he's what Doyle described him as. He's not as honorable compared to the novel. He doesn't care about who he brings onto his side. Just uses people any way he can. They screw up, their fault. The mysteries they deal with are okay, not too complicated so kids don't get lost, but they do a lot of streamlining when they adapt the novels. Some things they keep from them get a 22nd century twist. There's one episode about a vampire who can suck data from banks, or you get robotic werewolves in space. Here's the bit that I hated. The show's very cheap looking. It's one of the early digital animation shows, and they went the full 2D CGI background stuff. Integrating CGI into animation can be really cool, like the 90s Iron Man show. They animated the suit formation in CG, but most would do backgrounds. It's jarring because you'd have 1 second of CG cars and go back to 2D. The Ghost in the Shell 2.0 movie did this. The first Pokemon movie did this. An anime called Monkey Magic heavily overused CGI backgrounds. I never liked it. Holmes also commonly had errors. They tried to give the textures a cell look, but it looked like a cheap N64 game. Futurama came out the same year and nailed that look. Hover cars would fly through buildings, lighting issues caused by low render settings, even camera moves exposing artwork edges. Plus the show is plagued with aliasing artifacts, jaggy edges on the lines because the show was all processed digitally, making it harder to smooth them out. The theme song is pretty bad too. I can't remember a 90s show that had a bad theme song like this.
Bring Sherlock Holmes back to life. Back to life. Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century.
Even the logo's cheap. They use the stock graphic font. I remember these cheap fonts. Good writers, bad effects. How does it hold up with all the other adaptations? If you love Sherlock, it's a different take, much like Robert Downey's Sherlock. It's inventive in adapting the stories. I think they did a decent job on all the episodes, besides the secondary characters and lack of closure. Give it a look if you wanted something else from Sir Doyle's universe. Thanks for checking out the video. Subscribe if you want to see more from me. And if you remember a movie or a show that's been long forgotten, good or bad, leave it as a suggestion below. I'm always on the lookout for obscured stuff.